The major news around the NFL right now is Brandon Aiyuk, and he happens to be rumored to potentially be going to the team that my co-host covers, some other teams available as well for trade talks, because the 49ers have allowed him to seek a trade and speak to teams, which is significant. And what significant things could happen to teams in the AFC East, potential pitfalls in the AFC East in the 2024 season on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Those are the handles to get those Twitter questions in for Wednesday or maybe Thursday this week, depending on what big news happens in the NFL on Wednesdays. Mailbag episode at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Drop a question in the YouTube comments. Make sure you subscribe while you're there. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down and sports stop sporting like we want them to this summer. FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. It's the dominant headline in the NFL right now. It just so happens to involve the two teams that we cover, Matt. And, you know, we get accused of talking too much 49ers and Steelers, but this is a story we can't ignore. It's not going to be the whole podcast today because we're starting our series of potential pitfalls for every team, division by division. We're starting with the AFC East on today's show. One of those AFC East teams, the New England Patriots, are rumored to be involved in a potential Brandon Aiyuk trade. And let me set this up because, Matt, just before we started recording, Kyle Shanahan was speaking to media at the podium from 49ers camp, and he essentially confirmed everything that's been reported recently. And he said that Brandon Aiyuk has been allowed to speak to teams and seek a trade. And this is something we saw that happen, although a very different part of the season. This happened in February and March when DeForest Buckner was traded from the 49ers. And essentially they were at a contract impasse, and the 49ers said to DeForest Buckner's agent, okay, if you think you can get that dollar amount, go find it from another team, and you better bring us back a first-round pick. And they did. And so I think that's where we're at right now with this Brandon Aiyuk stuff. It's like, look, we're far apart. Neither side has budged since May. So go find the money if you think it's out there, and you better satisfy what we want in return as well, which is kind of the hiccup here now. And according to reports, it's been the Browns and the Patriots have satisfied the 49ers from a trade, and the Washington Commanders and Pittsburgh Steelers are Brandon Aiyuk's preferred destination. Washington just basically said, nope, we're out. We're no good. And apparently the 49ers and Steelers have had trouble coming to an agreement on compensation and trade. And I don't know where the details are with Aiyuk and the Steelers as far as the money side of things. But this is where it gets difficult because the 49ers have to be satisfied and Brandon Aiyuk have to be satisfied. And then the buying team also has to be satisfied with what they're giving up in both trade and money to the two parties. And so that's where we are at as of Tuesday afternoon, Matt.
So I'm at Steelers camp, of course. And if you're new, welcome. But I'm sure you know I'm a Steelers guy and he's a Niners guy. And this is not the first time we've had a similar conversation. But of course, this is the biggest topic around the NFL right now. And if I was a Bears guy and BP was a Saints guy, we would be having this exact same conversation.
Yes.
Probably with a little less of our heart in it and in-depth, one-sidedness to it.
Well, and a little less knowledge because this is
true.
We know that we should be the ones talking about this, right? And
right.
We talked about this before the draft, remember? And a lot of 49ers fans were like, well, hey, what about Troy Fautanu? And it's like, well, they would have done it before the draft if the 49ers wanted to draft Fautanu and the Steelers liked Aiyuk more than the guy they drafted in the first round. And we had talked about that as a potential trade. And it was actually rumored out there that maybe the Steelers and the Niners had been talking. And I think it's been confirmed that the Steelers have called the 49ers before this summer about Brandon Aiyuk. And, they didn't get a deal done. And apparently the Steelers like, nope, we want to draft our offensive tackle here in the first round. And, and we're going to move along with our guys. And they ended up drafting a third round wide receiver as well. did the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the 49ers ended up taking a first round wide receiver. So my question to you, first of all, and the Steelers are apparently still in the mix. So here's my read on the whole thing. Ayuk doesn't want to go to Cleveland or New England. And so they're putting the message out there, trying to get a better offer from the Steelers. Even though they say that the Steelers are kind of not the winning team right now, I feel like both Ayuk and the 49ers want the Steelers to be the winning team. And they're trying to get that offer upped, whether it's the trade offer or the contract offer, and satisfy all the parties. So I still think the Steelers are actually in the lead because I don't think Ayuk wants to go to New England or Cleveland. That's the way I'm reading this thing right now. And I think the information getting leaked out there about the trade offer being accepted by the 49ers from those two teams, a message to the Steelers saying, up your offer so we can get this done.
I can tell you players want to play because of Tomlin more than anything. Yes. I mean, he's respected in the player world as there is a coach. They want to play for him. And I think everything you said makes all the sense in the world. Now, I can offer a lot of insight in that I've been following this. I'm 51. I've been following the Steelers my entire life. They've traded a future first-round pick once. That was for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Like, that's not how they do business, because back in the 60s, they traded him away. Before Chuck Noll got here, they traded him away left and right. And one of them turned into either Dick Butkus or Gale Sayers. And the Rooney, enough of this,
Yeah.
So I think that could be in play. And me, not the Rooneys or Steelers, I would say, take our future first, give us Ayuk. You could have 2 firsts. You could go call teams and get another player or whatever. And maybe that's, the baseline, or maybe that's a jumping off point. Fahotano, I can tell you too, they didn't think he would get to the mid-first round when they drafted him. So if it would have been Fuaga or another tackle, maybe they would have made the deal then. But when it was him, it was, no, we love him. And coincidentally, I expect this to happen because they didn't practice yesterday. He was inserted with the ones finally today at practice 2 hours ago. So yeah. I think he's pretty entrenched. You know what I mean? Right. The other names, which kind of makes sense, is from a Steeler perspective, and I'm sure the Niners want a player, and these are just rumors, but I've heard Highsmith, and I've heard that the Niners would want Pickens, which makes all the sense in the world for your team, but not mine. Then I still have a receiver need. That doesn't add up.
And the 49ers fans that have asked me about, okay, what's compensation from the Pittsburgh Steelers? It's got to be, and we talked yesterday on the show about the Patriots and the Cleveland Browns side of this thing. So you can go back and listen to that episode, and we can maybe talk a little bit more about that. But it's kind of been, the rumors that are out there are Amari Cooper in a second, or Kendrick Bourne in a second. And obviously Kendrick Bourne and Amari Cooper, 2 very different wide receivers. Bourne came from the 49ers, so they already have some familiarity there and would like him probably.
Sure.
To make sure they have enough bodies at wide receiver. And then the second round picks would maybe make up the difference there, because, the Patriots second round picks probably gonna be a lot higher than the Browns second round.
And he's not as big a cap hit as Cooper. And Cooper, I think
the cap stuff for Cooper hurts the Browns more than the 49ers in this situation.
Oh, really? I didn't look at it.
There's a lot of dead money, but not a lot of base, from what I remember.
Okay. I don't think he's going to be a Brown next year, just from a Browns perspective.
Right. And he's an upcoming free agent. So these are just like, okay, well, let's make sure we have bodies at wide receiver. We could win the Super Bowl with Amari Cooper. Yes, yeah.
Right.
You're not going to lose a lot, but it's not a long-term thing for you. As far as the Steelers go, Matt, let's hammer this out.
Okay.
Let's figure out what the trade is next. Then we'll talk AFC East. What could be the potential pitfalls that might derail each team's season? The Jets, the Patriots, the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins in the AFC East. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. You love sports. I love sports. Matt loves sports. That's why we're all here talking about sports every day. And so whether it's the Olympics or Major League Baseball, there's always something to bet on at FanDuel. But, the NFL season's not quite here yet. So all you got to do if you want to get involved in any action, even during the doldrums of the summer, is open up the FanDuel app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long, and tons of ways still to bet on the NFL. futures bets. Who's going to win the next Super Bowl? Prop bets. I think I haven't checked, but you probably bet on which team Brandon Aiyuk's going to end up on right now.
You can.
So head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So speaking of, I think I'd put my money on the Steelers for Aiyuk because it's not the
I would too.
And I think that's where they're trying to get this to go. That's how I read the tea leaves. And maybe not. Maybe Aiyuk hates the 49ers so much right now, and there's some bad blood there that they want him out. He wants to be gone, that he would prefer any place, Cleveland, New England. And I'm not saying that, people shouldn't want to go live and play in Cleveland or New England. Those two teams are in very different places as far as winning, if that's part of the equation. Or maybe it's just all money. Whoever gives the most is where Brandon Aiyuk wants to go. But I feel like if Brandon Aiyuk,
I don't understand why he wouldn't be interested in Cleveland. New England's a long way away winning wise from San Francisco, but Steelers and Cleveland at least are in the same tier.
Right. Oh yeah. Cleveland's a playoff team, and you're going to go there, and maybe who knows? I have no idea.
I have no idea. Maybe
if him and his wife and his, if his family was like, I don't want to live in cold weather, but it's cold in Pittsburgh too.
Right. So, it's the warmest of the three, but okay.
But there'll be snow on the ground, right, in certain parts of the year. So
it's a far cry from Arizona State, I'll tell you that. Right.
And he grew up in California, Nevada, Arizona. Those are the places he's spent time. So it's not like he's been a West Coast guy, and so who knows what's in his heart. I have no idea. This isn't an Antonio Brown situation either. Just look here. So here's one of the things I don't really understand, and I would probably fault the agent more than anything on this one, because I think all sides have some blame in how this has been played out. And at the same time, I don't blame the 49ers trying to do right by their own organization. I don't blame Brandon Aiyuk trying to get more money. But I think the agent should probably be in Ayuk's ear a little bit more, being like, look, this is a war. This is a long-term thing for your future. This isn't something that has to happen now today, because an extension is added onto your contract. That's not going to start until next year anyway. If he signed an extension, he would still be under his 5th-year option. Devontae Smith signed an extension that doesn't start for 2 years. You know what I mean? Still got a season of normal contract, and then another one that's already under contract. Then it starts. And so and you can move the money around to make it make sense, and all of those things. And my point is, like, Brandon Aiyuk could play through this season on the 5th-year option, and the market for wide receivers is only going up. Like, he's not going to make less money next year, and the only reason is like you're trying to protect yourself from injury, essentially. If you're Brandon Aiyuk, that you can sign a deal next year, and it'll probably be a bigger deal. So the idea of playing on the 5th-year option is something that is, to me, makes most sense for both sides right now if they can't figure it out, because in the long term, Aiyuk will make more money, and the 49ers would get Aiyuk plus a pick when they tag and trade him next offseason, instead of Cooper in a pick, or instead of Bourne in a pick. And you probably get the same pick after tagging and trading him. So the 5th-year option works for both sides. The fact that that doesn't seem like an option is super weird to me. But moving on from that, Matt, Steelers and 49ers. The 49ers have already turned down the Patriots' 2nd-round pick, which is a high 2nd-round pick, 34th overall, according to report.
I would too if I were them. But
before the draft,
a decent offer. Okay, yeah.
And so they turned that down. So the 49ers want a 1st-rounder or a 1st-rounder plus for Brandon Aiyuk. That's been the asking price. That's been the reported price all offseason. They're going to turn around.
That's the A.J. Brown price. A.J. Brown was a 1 and a 3. And I think it's like the exact same situation.
Yes. And maybe they get a little bit less than that. But I have a hard time believing the 49ers all of a sudden, and unless they just played this so horribly that they're like, okay, cool, 2nd-round pick is all it takes now. I don't think that's the case. And I don't think a throw-in player like Kendrick Bourne gets you anything. That's a throw-in. And we've already seen Amari Cooper get traded for a 5th-round pick. Like, Amari Cooper is not like, oh, that makes your 3rd-round pick become a 1st-round pick value. To me, that's the way I'd be looking at this. Like, Amari Cooper, as good as he is almost a throw-in. Like, if a team tried to trade for Amari Cooper, I'm going to fight you on that a little bit. Well, so how come Amari Cooper's been traded for like a 5th-round pick in the same situation, walk year type stuff?
Yeah, but I think he can help you win the Super Bowl. I think he's still a top 20 receiver.
He's a good player.
I mean, he's way more invaluable than Bourne.
I agree there, but I'm saying Bourne's like a 7th-round pick. Like,
he's a throw.
Who's trading anything for Bourne? Bourne's a throw-in. Bourne is like, we're giving you a body, but the pick is going to be the pick no matter what. That's the way I look at it. And Cooper's better than that, but Cooper doesn't turn a 3rd round pick into a 1st round pick, is what I'm saying.
I tend to agree, but I could understand it if the Niners said, "Give me Amari in a 3rd." Yeah, it doesn't quite settle right. I hear you.
Yeah. So I understand why you would want Amari, and I don't think he's a hugely valuable chip in this. I think
that his age and his price.
So the way I'm looking at
it, a 1-year run.
Right. From the 49ers perspective, the way I'm looking at this is the players, the throw in, the pick is the meat of the trade.
Yes, I don't disagree.
For that reason, I think the Steelers and the 49ers could figure this out. And the thing I had thought about, I was like, look, the 49ers want a 1st round plus. Are the Steelers now willing to trade the future 1st rounder instead of the one that they're ready to use and they knew what it was and they had scouted all the players? Is that possible? So I would, my
GM Matt Wood.
Yeah. So I'm asking for, if I'm the 49ers GM, say, hey, a 1st plus Van Jefferson. And Jefferson is a complete throw in. And because, he wouldn't be a starter or anything if Brandon Aiyuk is there. And the 49ers would just need a body, but someone they could trust to be a pro. Calvin Austin, maybe. It would be a 1st plus a throw in would be the ask. And can we just say right away, like Troy Fautanu is not going anywhere. Pickens isn't going anywhere. Even if the 49ers said, we have the gall to ask for Pickens. The point of this is to add a receiver to Pickens, not move Pickens in the deal.
Right. Like from a Steelers perspective, if I send you Pickens in a pick, even if it's a 3rd, that doesn't sound like a bad deal. But then I probably have to send more picks somewhere else for Tyler Lockett or something. And then I'm low on picks, and that's not what we do right here. You know what I mean?
Yep. And so let's say you say no to the 1st round pick if you're the Steelers, right? So now we're like, okay, maybe a 2 plus, but now the 49ers are like, well, we want a more significant player.
2 and Austin isn't going to get it done.
Right.
Right.
And we're talking about Highsmith.
Highsmith's the interesting name.
Yeah. And I think
I bet I'm going to value him more than you will, though, because I think he's a really good player on a really good contract that would be very useful and gets you 10 sacks this year. And
right. And I like him as a player. I think that would make a lot of sense. The 49ers brought in basically that player in Leonard Floyd this offseason.
Similar.
So now you have great depth, but maybe you put a turbo package together where they're all in the field. But as far as team building, like these teams have been built. That's why I think the player is a throw in. The player is less significant in the trade. Yeah. But then I'd be, the 49ers would probably ask for, okay, well, what about Herbig, right? Or what about, I could see them asking and being turned down for Pickens. I just don't think it's going to be one of the young players. Keanu Benton is a player I would for sure ask for if I was the 49ers. That you would not want to give up, but Ayuk's more valuable than Benton. So then you'd be like, okay, you can have Benton, but we're only going to give you a 4th or something. You know what I mean? And so that's why I think the pick is the most important part of this.
Yeah, and I keep just coming back I'll give you the one for your receiver.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's where I'm at with it too. And I think
you can have Calvin Austin if you want.
Yeah, a 1 and Calvin Austin. There we go. Let's do it. That's the deal.
Yeah, I'm in. Are you in?
I'm in. So let's fax the paperwork. Do they fax anymore?
I don't know. I remember hovering around the fax machine on signing day at Pitt, like it's a fire.
You're saying no to. You're saying no to Van Jefferson, even though you're getting Aiyuk back.
This is too nerdy for the general audience, but he's higher on the depth chart. He's the better player, and him and Arthur Smith are buds from Atlanta, and he's helping install the offensive stuff. So I would rather move Austin. You know what I mean? Yeah. Who's dynamic, and you'd probably get a lot out of him. You get more out of him than the Steelers would be my guess.
And I know you mentioned James Daniels before. I don't think the 49ers would turn their nose
center for you,
as an offensive lineman, just to have the depth there. Obviously, right now Trent Williams is holding out too. So Dan Moore, if you
talk about Dan Moore,
if you have your young bookend tackles, maybe Dan Moore would be potentially someone that the 49ers would have.
And he's more of the throw-in. I mean,
right, yeah,
he's worth more than Austin because he's a left tackle, and I think he'll get $6 million on the open market next year. He might be someone's left tackle, and I think he'll play 10 years in the league. But he only plays left.
That's where we're at. The 49ers are waiting for the Steelers to say, okay, we're either going to give you a significant player plus a 2, or we're going to give you that 1. And I think the Steelers have said no to the significant player and to the one. That's how I read this right now.
I bet.
So we'll see.
And if Pickens is a deal breaker, then that won't work. If you guys have to get Pickens, then sorry, this isn't a good match.
And if I'm the 49ers, I wouldn't expect to get Pickens back. And maybe the 49ers are like, look, we don't want to trade Aiyuk. We're trying to just pressure him into a deal and realizing this other thing isn't going to work. You got to go somewhere you don't want to go, or we're going to get something crazy from the place you do want to go.
Okay, last question. Here's the two offers on the table: Austin in a 1 or Highsmith in a 3.
The 1 easily for me.
Okay. If it was Highsmith in a 2, I would rather give you the 1.
Really? Okay. Then I think it's still the 1 then.
Okay. Yeah, I would assume you would take the 1.
I like Highsmith. I just don't know how he fits in with the roster as currently built. And again, like if New England was, I would say, yeah, Judon, let's go. I would much prefer Judon than Bourne, right? And I would much prefer Highsmith than Calvin Austin or Van Jefferson or whatever, So
are you doing Judon in a 2, considering it might be the 33rd pick in the draft, or 35th pick in the draft?
Judon in it, like that's not bad. That's where the Patriots win this against the other teams because the pick is better.
That's huge against the Browns.
Like them, so like a second-round pick from the Patriots, and who knows, maybe they surprise us all and win a bunch of games. But a second-round pick from the Patriots is like a second and a third from the Steelers or the Browns.
Yeah, and you guys might end up picking 32 and 33.
Right, exactly. That's the idea.
That's the plan. That's the perfect world, right?
Speaking of the Patriots, what could derail their season in 2024 plus the rest of the AFC East? Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. When your schedule is packed, and I know these days everybody's schedule is more packed than ever before in human history, and whether it's kids or activities, big work projects, whatever it is, and I mean, there's so much more, and there's something in your pocket that's reminding you about something else, constantly bugging you all the time, every day. It's easy for your priorities to slip, even when you know what makes us happy, right? It's hard to make time for that sometimes. So there's non-negotiables. That should be a non-negotiable. So is therapy. It's more important than ever to speak to a therapist once a week. Make sure you're hitting the goals you want to hit in your life. Make sure you're making time for what makes you happy. And sometimes you have to, sometimes you need a little help even identifying what that is that you need to be prioritizing and making time for in your life. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, glad we could figure out the Brandon Aiyuk trade, and we got that deal done. Good. Okay, we'll probably report that tomorrow. I'm sure Mark Kahn and John Lynch are listening to this podcast right now, trying to figure out what.
I'll go track Omar down because he's probably in I think he's a floor above me right now. I'll go find him.
You're there asking him.
Yeah.
Get some insight for us. So. The New England Patriots, look, what could derail their season? I think the worst thing they could do is probably offer a first-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk that becomes the number 1 pick in the NFL draft next year, right? I don't have a lot of hopes. I'm sure internally they have more hopes, but clearly they want a young receiver for their young quarterback. This team, it's all about don't ruin Drake May. That's the only thing. Like, develop him, don't ruin him.
Same thing. Like, I don't think this season, all these teams' goals are different. The Niners' goals are a lot different than the Patriots' goal. It's time to put some bricks down on the house, and make your quarterback look like he belongs, even if he only plays the last month of the season. If he doesn't play at all, don't ruin him this year. Make him comfortable for the future. This just is kind of derailing the whole situation because the expectations are so low. But I could conceivably see them getting to maybe 7 wins with the optimistic view, as opposed to like what derails things. If that defense is as good as last year and May or Brissett is the 22nd best quarterback in the league and can actually make some field goals, get some bounces, maybe they win 6 or 7 games. That's the opposite.
And you get a legit weapon that's potentially, the Stephon Diggs to Josh Allen. Maybe that's what Brandon Aiyuk ends up being for Drake May. And you get some decent quarterback play for half the season from Brissett, then half the season from Drake May, and you have a legit number one wide receiver in Brandon Aiyuk. That helps your offense as well. You've got to you could draw a picture where they're not awful, right? And so that's the idea from the for the New England Patriots, and some building blocks there. And so
and even if they made the Aiyuk trade, I could see an offseason where you go into the offseason and says, we really only have one big goal, and let's build an offensive line. We're going to sign 2 in free agency. We're drafting 1 with an early pick, and then we're almost there, like one big goal to knock.
Absolutely. I'm gonna preface the New York Jets this way, and it's on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Is Aaron Rodgers still good, even if he's healthy? Or I said still great, because when's the last time we saw greatness? Great Hall of Fame Aaron Rodgers. When's the last time we've seen that? It's been multiple calendar years.
Yeah, and that's an obvious one. When we do this, I really want to avoid. Well, if Patrick Mahomes gets hurt, it's going to be bad. Of course.
Yeah,
but I think this build in New York is way more fragile than most, though. I mean, both your tackles are old. Your quarterback is old. I mean, I think they could be injured or derailed easier, although I like their O-line youth too. One small one is I think their head coach coming from the Niners has done a really, really good job with the defense. But it's hard to be like a top 5 defense 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row. What if they're only the 12th best defense? All of a sudden your backbone's not strong,
I tend to think that they're so well coached, and you have, multiple guys like Robert. If the Jets staff is fired this offseason, and as a 49ers guy covering the 49ers, the Niners were looking for a defensive coordinator, and apparently they called the Jets and asked Robert Saleh, like, hey, can we hire Jeff Ulbrich away from you? Call plays for us, and look, you get to call plays again, Robert. And he's like, nope, not happening. We're not letting you talk to him. But that's 2 legitimate defensive coordinator play callers that would be available that would get jobs in the NFL next year. And so I think they're so well coached on the defensive side of the ball. Now, offensive side of the ball, Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers, and it could go a lot of ways. But there's so much talent. I think the defense is just going to be rock solid. I think they can cover guys. They're good on the back end. They're good at linebacker. They're good on the defensive line. There would have to be so much that goes wrong there. And again, we're not talking about it. So I just think Aaron Rodgers maybe just might not be as good as what is bouncing around in our heads. And maybe you have some problems on the offensive line. And then, to be honest with you, is it personalities that could ruin this thing? Because Aaron Rodgers was hollering at his star receiver and Garrett Wilson. They need to have the best relation. They need to be best buds.
And it all gets magnified. All gets magnified in the Big Apple. They've triple the media covering that is at Steeler practice. You know what I mean?
Right. And if Aaron Rodgers plays bad, everyone's going to be like, "Oh no, he sucks and he's a jerk," and all this stuff. And it's going to get it could snowball pretty quickly. It's much different than what that Green Bay. You
never think this in August, but they could be a 5-win team.
They could be.
You know what I mean? They could also be in the Super Bowl.
And they could be in the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think sort of psychology is probably how I would put it with this team.
Yeah.
Is where
that's a good way. Locker room and
the pressure of the hot seat for GM and head coach and stuff like that.
If he's Russell Wilson the last 2 years, we need more out of you. That's not good. Yeah.
I was going to bring that up to you as far as draft picks and how they're valued with the Steelers. And I know the Steelers are right there every year, but when's the last time Justin Fields or Russell Wilson led a playoff team? It's been a long time. And for Fields, it's longer. For Russell Wilson, it's been
quite a while. Yeah.
4 years now, 4 seasons.
I would imagine. Right. 100%.
We are on to the Buffalo Bills.
That's a tough one.
They're teetering on already being like, I don't know what this team is.
I know. But because Allen, to me, is the second best quarterback in the league, he raises all ships. And I can't take the easy way out and be like, well, Allen gets hurt. Well, then they're shot. They may win 5 games, But, I mean, the defense, to me, is a little worrisome. I mean, they redid the secondary. The safeties are gone. But I still have a hard time seeing this team being a 6-win team. You know, I mean, like they may not be a contender for a year or two again, but I can't imagine what would need to happen for them to really bottom out. I mean, maybe the weapons just aren't ready yet.
I would say the thing that derails the Bills is lack of development.
Okay.
Right? Like
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
You lose Diggs and Coleman's not ready, and Khalil Shakir is like just kind of, and
he's a 3 or
3-4s, and they're not. You just don't have offense. You just don't have a way to put enough points on the board. Then Josh Allen's trying to do too much, throws 20 interceptions and has, it's one of those seasons where you're playing from behind because, the secondary's giving up too much in coverage on the defensive side of the ball. And that's the snowball. I think there is, the development of the playmakers on offense and the loss of a lot of really important players on defense.
One thing that would worry me too is I do think they're in the middle of a philosophy shift where they're getting more physical. They're running the football. And what if they can't run the ball really well? I'd be like, oh man, the stuff we've switched to isn't working,
Yeah, it's like, oh shoot, maybe maybe there's other reasons why we haven't been a great running football team for a while.
Although Allen raises that ship too. They'll probably have 600 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns,
Ray Davis is having a good camp, the rookie 4th rounder, James Cook.
Yeah.
So I like the 1-2.
I'm kind of getting more and more excited about the offense.
I tend to think it's going to be fine, but again, we're kind of being pessimistic. What could happen?
Trying to do our best, right?
But all eyes for me are on, Khalil Shakir. Can he take a bigger step and be that, be a target hog player for that offense and move and be almost a Puka Nacua for their offense, right? And Keon Coleman, how quickly does he develop? Is that the right? I feel like they have 3 slot receivers. That's what I don't like about this. In Curtis Samuel,
Keon maybe Coleman, 4 in Kincaid.
Right. You're right.
It's what they all are. They're all big slots. Right.
I don't know if Coleman is he's a jump ball guy potentially, but I think he's a big slot the way he plays more.
His Michigan State stuff was more outside the numbers, but that's 2 years ago and 3 teams ago.
I have seen some awesome Bills camp highlights of speaking of outside guys, Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Chase Claypool dropping passes. So
they do that well. Dolphins, right?
Dolphins. Yep. What derails the Dolphins, Matt?
Again, injuries aren't one we can go on, but Tua's had one healthy year in a long time. And I'm not sure just doing judo's enough to make sure that he's out of the woods that way behind that line. I also think Vic Fangio knows a thing or two about defense, and a rookie defensive coordinator might be a downgrade, even if he wasn't the most loved coach in Miami Dolphin history. And my biggest one is weather, physicality, closing out games late in the season. Tua's fantasy numbers fall through the roof by month. December Dolphins with all that speed is not the same as August and September Dolphins. I think they're a Ferrari that can easily get derailed when the snow comes.
Yeah, and they need to start fast too.
Yeah, and they need to host playoff games, which is hard to do if you're not winning as much late in the year as you did at the beginning of the year.
Right, exactly. And if you don't win a bunch at the beginning of the year, the weather gets colder, and it might be that much more difficult to win that home field in December and January.
Yeah, and as good as their run scheme is, I kind of wish they had Ray Davis. He doesn't have to play at all to get you to the lead, but
I kind of love
10 minutes he could.
I love how they're just leaning into what they are, and they're
100%.
We want speed, and that's how we're going to win. So have fun.
Dove in the deep end, but sometimes you drown when you do
that. I think it didn't jive on defense, so I'm not worried about a rookie defensive coordinator in Anthony Weaver, and I actually like what I'm hearing. I mean,
people rave about
hear from every camp, so it's not like, but
yeah.
I think that even if it doesn't work great, it's not going to be worse than what they were on defense last year. What I would worry about on offense, and you kind of talked about it, it's just the fragility, not so much from an injury standpoint, although that's part of it, Odell Beckham, but Tyreek Hill, and it's what if what you want to do doesn't work?
Yeah. Sloppy conditions, weather, wind, whatever.
You're in a bunch of 3rd and longs, and you're not hitting home runs with the run game.
I don't think there are many teams worse with 300-pounders. I'm not talking about their edge guys. I'm not talking about Phillips and Chubb. I'm talking about D tackles and O linemen they'd be low on my list of 300-pounders teams that I would want.
Yeah. I'm with you. I believe
Yeah,
that.
and it's a physical game,
Let us know what you think at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Get those questions in for our mailbag episode. And who knows, we might have an end to the Brandon Aiyuk saga at some point soon.
No, we just finished it up.
Especially, oh yeah, that's true. We got the trade figured out. So we'll probably just be like, yep, they did the trade we said on the next episode of Peacock and Williamson. Make sure you're tuned in, subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast for your second listen. Check out one of the 200 podcasts here on Locked On Podcast Network. Get ready for your fantasy football leagues with Locked On Fantasy and Locked On Dynasty and so much more. Back next time, Peacock and Williamson.